Coming up on Market to Market. Wild weather makes a year-end rally from Texas to Minnesota. One farmer is using some of the richest soil on Earth to combat food insecurity. Those stories and market analysis with Tom Fitzenmeyer next.
Pioneer Hybrid International is a proud sponsor of Market to Market. Tomorrow. For over 100 years, we've worked to help our customers be ready for tomorrow. Trust in tomorrow. Information is available from a Grinnell Mutual agent today. And by Sukup Manufacturing Company. Offering a full line of grain drying and storage equipment and steel buildings, Sukup Manufacturing is on a mission to protect and preserve your crop and the tools that produce it. This is the Friday, December 28 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Delaney Howell. To call the week on Wall Street a roller coaster ride would be selling the story short. The worst Christmas Eve on the stock exchange was followed by the best one-day Dow Jones performance. The market pinballed nearly 900 points Thursday, the biggest intraday swing since 2011. November's new home sales report was caught up in the ongoing government shutdown and wasn't released as scheduled. Portions of the Department of Agriculture also are under shutdown, but MFP payments are still being distributed and no new applications will be accepted until the government is back in operation. Another brutal week for crude oil as projections of continued high supplies pushed the commodity to its lowest level in almost 18 months. AAA says the average price per gallon of gasoline is $2.30, but in 9 states the cost went below $2. Mother Nature failed to deliver a white Christmas for much of the Corn Belt. Instead, blizzard conditions and flood warnings arrived in the lead up to the new year. Paul Yeager has more.
The Lone Star State was inundated midweek with thunderstorms. Heavy rain soaked the Austin, Texas area. One woman was trapped by the quick rising storm waters and had to be rescued from her vehicle.
There was a little tiny tree in the midst of all of that stuff. And I thought, if that car shifts one bit, I am going to wing over to that tree and grab a hold of it. So I kind of already had a plan if I was going to completely go under.
Blizzard conditions blasted folks from Kansas to the Dakotas, shuttering roads and airports. Police in several states were forced to shut down interstates as winds whipped the more than a foot of snow across the paths of would-be travelers. Minnesota DOT officials advised folks to wait out the storm for roads to improve. Portions of places in the land of 10,000 lakes received nearly 20 inches of snow. Crews in Duluth were working overtime to clear the remnants of the storm, which was still falling early Friday. The amount of moisture that fell in the last 72 hours across the U.S. is above average. This map from iWeatherNet reveals heavy rain in the south, across Texas, through Louisiana, Mississippi, and into Alabama. Farther north in Iowa, mostly rain fell on empty farm fields. Only a light dusting of snow arrived in central Iowa after close to 2 inches of rain were recorded over a 2-day period. Traffic was slowed on the morning commute with the icy combination on the roads. For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.
Before the ink was dry on the president's signature of the 2018 Farm Bill, USDA officials considered changes cut from the legislation. Work rules surrounding the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, were part of the directives USDA aimed to examine. Food insecurity impacts millions of Americans, and that includes those living in areas where food production is abundant. Josh Bittner looks at one operation doing their part to provide fresh produce in the land of tall corn. His report is our cover story.
Iowa is a top producer of commodities like corn and soybeans that find their way to ports of call across the globe. But one Hawkeye State grower is employing some of the richest soil on Earth to provide a variety of fresh food items for those less fortunate, a little closer to home.
There's no reason in a place like Iowa we can't grow enough of certain vegetables during times of the year like this to give everybody the food they need.
So it's easy to set up test plots.
A soil scientist by trade, Tracy Blackmer converted a hog operation near Madrid into Gardening for Good.
And that's all planted by hand.
A nonprofit organization that educates youth and corporate volunteers about agriculture and community service.
Anyone know what the name of these are?
Dibbles.
Yep, dibbles or dibblers. What are they used for besides killing vampires?
More and more kids are further removed from the farm from ever. And even though this is rural Iowa, there are farms all around, most kids still couldn't even tell you what a soybean plant is.
So like I can see right there.
Active in his local church and accustomed to lending a helping hand, the genesis of Blackmer's charity was geared toward assisting a food pantry run by his mother. The initial harvest was so abundant, it filled the shelves of 3 additional pantries, and then some.
And she's like, well, you can bring it to the food bank, I bet. I bet you they'd take it. And what's a food bank? You know, I didn't know what that was. So I said, sure.
In nearby Des Moines, the Food Bank of Iowa acts as a go-between for over 500 smaller pantries and other partners who assist food-insecure Iowans.
He expanded the program and started to bring the produce to the Food Bank of Iowa because we have many more distribution opportunities than he would as an individual.
CEO Michelle Book says her organization moves over 1 million pounds of food monthly, more than half of which is donated, and they're always looking to supplement non-perishables with lean protein and fresh produce.
One of the things Tracy's most brilliant about is considering what to plant. And we received from him last year melons, peppers, squash, things that are easily transportable and have a decent shelf life.
For frontline partners like Catholic Charities, which act as a retailer of sorts to the food bank's wholesaler role, the ability to offer fresh food options for free is a big deal. And those dependent on their services are grateful for Blackmer's efforts.
I think it's great that he can take the time and do it for the ones that need it and can use it.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you, sir?
Saves me a lot of money, lots of it, and nutrition from it.
The Food Bank of Iowa says they received over 125,000 pounds of produce from Gardening for Good following the last growing season. And that amount has been on the rise every year over the past 5 years. Book adds that just like on the farm, volunteers are their lifeblood.
We can't do anything without volunteer assistance. And Tracy's been really, really smart. He knows certainly how to engage them around the work of helping those that are food insecure.
Since 2014, the state of Iowa has offered an annual farm-to-food donation tax credit of 15%, up to $5,000, for eligible farm operations donating self-produced food commodities to food banks or other emergency feeding organizations. Blackmer has utilized his research trial expertise and the tax credit option to help convince a handful of other producers to pitch in.
The model is scalable for some things. There's a lot of people that have that patch of something that maybe it's the point rows that are hard to get at, or for whatever reason there's that nice little area that's separate. It's a really good reinforcement for landowners and or the farmers to do that.
Though Blackmer classifies his 20 acres as a hobby farm, he's adapted it to reap benefits from challenges large neighboring operations face and help clean up the environment as well.
There's about 2,500 acres that drain into this, and of course, you know, a lot of the tile drainage water, especially in the spring and the early part of the season, you know, have a reasonable amount of nitrates in it. So as we're watering, we're actually catching some of that and fertilizing with it into there, so we're actually helping to pull out some of the nitrates in that.
Gardening for Good's plastic mulch, drip irrigation, and row spacing help improve yields and minimize labor on tasks like weeding. Blackmer says another benefit is the various groups coming through can get into the field quickly after significant weather events.
This is the perfect match to show them a little bit about Iowa, how we take care of our communities, and show them a little bit about our agriculture, so it really ties in well.
While Iowa's commodities go around the world, sometimes the world comes to Iowa. Cassie Bailey, the Iowa Sister State's International Program Manager, says Gardening for Good also is a perfect fit for international students and faculty seeking an American farm experience.
The kids are learning a lot, and it's a lot of fun for everyone, I think.
For Blackmer, it's all part of the spirit of giving he tries to nurture. And a novel approach to things like disposal of subpar crops helps cultivate good times amidst the backdrop of hard work.
They're getting told that they can throw an item. That's not typical in a school setting, especially with your teachers around.
So was that fun?
For Market to Market, I'm Josh Bittner.
Next, the Market to Market report.
Technical signals mostly moved by the trade as stalled government shutdown slowed news on export sales. For the week, March wheat fell 3 cents, and the nearby corn contract also dropped 3 cents. A lack of demand and mixed South American weather reports muted moves in the soy complex as the March soybean contract moved lower by 2 cents. The March meal contract gained $2.90 per ton. March cotton trended lower again this week by 99 cents per hundredweight. Over in the dairy parlor, January Class 3 milk futures improved 14 cents. The livestock market was mixed. February cattle added $1.48. January feeders gained $1.73, and the February lean hog contract fell 48 cents. In the currency markets, the U.S. dollar index lost 49 ticks. February crude oil shed 26 cents per barrel. COMEX gold added $24.90 per ounce, and the Goldman Sachs commodity index declined nearly 5 points to finish at 375.60. Joining us now to offer insight on these and other trends is one of our regular market analysts, Tom Fitzenmeyer. Tom, welcome back.
Thanks, Delaney.
Tom, we've got a lot to talk about. I want to focus on some bigger picture things here. We're at the end of the calendar year. Trade has been pretty low. Volume has been low. Let's start out here. Walk us through what's going on with the government shutdown and how that's impacting the commodity markets.
Well, generally speaking, a lack of knowledge is not good. I mean, markets operate best when everybody has full knowledge. And I think probably the commercials probably have a little better handle on what's going on than anybody else does, so maybe it's a bit of an advantage for them. I guess I think it's going to tend to be not so friendly to most markets when you don't know exactly what's going on. You tend to push prices down a little bit.
And when you say not knowing what's going on, we're not having weekly export sales.
Right.
WASDE, is that a concern for the January 11th report?
I think it is. I think a lot of people are talking about whether, if something doesn't get resolved or doesn't get resolved next week, then I would expect that report's going to be in peril, which is that's important, but it also includes the final production number, which is, what the final yield was in corn is kind of a number people have really been talking a lot about the last month or so. So, yeah, it's going to be a problem if it's not released. I mean, eventually the information is going to come out, I suppose, but it's not going to come out on the 11th, possibly.
Right. So how would that work then? If the information doesn't come out on the 11th, is it just rumors of what the trade is expecting?
I think it'll go on just like it's been going on, where every privates come out with their ideas and market reacts, and there are those that believe that's good. It'd be better off to not have the government putting out numbers, but I mean they tend to be fairly accurate when all is said and done. So I think it's important to know really where we're at to have those numbers.
And if we don't get those numbers come out, you said specifically the corn market is one that could be impacted by that. Was the corn market anticipating some bullish news on this January 11th report?
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that are friendly to the corn market believe that the yield's overstated by, I don't know, 1/2 to 2 bushel per acre, which drags that carryout down into levels that are just a little bit tighter now. There's probably a chance we're going to offset that because ethanol usage hasn't been what we were expecting. Export sales haven't been meeting the needed category every week, so there's some adjustments that could offset that. But overall, I think the perception is it's going to be supportive.
I want to come back to the ethanol thing. We've got a good question here. I think that sets the stage for just the grain markets in general. We've got Tim in Crookston, Minnesota. He said, New Year projection, Tom. What crop has the most upside from here? Corn, soybeans, or wheat?
I think wheat probably does. Wheat's got problems around the world that I think are going to tend to be supportive. Probably second would be corn. The corn market's got potential things sitting out there. You know, if there's a problem with South America, if China does come in and buy corn, if the yield is lower, then corn maybe has some bounce in it. But I'd guess overall wheat. South America's had problems. Australia's had problems. There's a lot of spots around the world that have kind of had wheat troubles.
What about when you factor in what's going on in Russia right now with wheat? The Russian Federal Statistics Service just estimated 72.1 million acres for their 2018 wheat harvest. That's a lot higher than a lot of other estimating services were guessing. How does that impact our world outlook?
Well, the whole Black Sea region. I mean, the Ukraine crop on corn and wheat was quite a bit better than we expected too. So that's why I'm a little cautious about getting too carried away with wheat, because always somebody around the world every month is harvesting wheat someplace, and there's quite a bit of it around. So, you know, when I say I think it's got more potential of maybe 30 to 40 cents, versus corn that's got maybe 15 to 20. So, you know, the margin of better than is not all that great in my mind.
So we're looking for another maybe 30 to 40 cents in the wheat markets.
Correct, yeah. March wheat up around 540 to 550 certainly is a possibility, but that would be the upper limits, I would think.
Okay. You mentioned earlier ethanol, and I want to make sure we talk about that, because going into the new year here, you even mentioned it in your newsletter this week, we're seeing ethanol producers and ethanol processors being in negative margins. They're pulling back on production. They are maybe shutting down plants in some instances. When we look at the 2019 picture, what does that reduction in ethanol do for the corn situation?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. Is it's to some extent, if there is a drop in yield, it's going to offset. If there's not a drop in yield, then it's going to contribute to stocks being bigger than we thought they were going to be. It certainly isn't a great thing for farmer producers that have grown accustomed to selling to ethanol plants, because one of the ways they can adjust that is that they're going to have to lower their basis and not pay farmers so much for corn to try and get their margins back. So, you know, we've really developed a big dependency on that ethanol industry, and if it starts to back off on us a little bit, it's going to be kind of a problem at the farm gate.
Have we seen basis start to decline yet from that ethanol reduction?
No, because up to this point it's been offset by lack of farmer selling. The farmer's been in such a tight holder, they've kind of had to bid up to get the corn to process. I don't know if that's going to change after the first of the year, because at some point corn is going to have to move.
Absolutely. So did we set ourselves up this week for testing our November lows?
Probably. We broke down through some pretty important support points. I guess I think that March contract could move back down into that 373, 367 area, somewhere down in there. I guess I'd lose my enthusiasm for being bearish corn and probably be accumulating long positions at that point.
Okay, the other big news we had this week, just actually on Friday, was this announcement that China purchased U.S. rice. That doesn't really fit into our mold of typical patterns here, but let's unpack that a little bit. Tom, why would China buy rice from the U.S.?
Apparently, they have less rice than we thought they did. That's the only thing I can figure out. I mean, I don't know. Politics gets in the middle of this to some extent too. So I don't know whether they did that to satisfy some requirement or some agreement that was made between the U.S. and China and trade negotiators. I don't know. The
question that came to my mind too was, why not buy, if it's a political move or some sort of olive branch, why not buy soybeans? Why are we buying rice?
Yeah, a good question. And maybe we're the only ones that have it. I mean, I'm not big on the rice market, but I'm not sure you can go to Brazil or Argentina and buy much rice. So if you need that and we've got it, maybe we're sort of in the driver's seat on that. I mean, because in 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to be able to buy new crop beans out of Brazil. So,
yeah. So speaking of Brazil, what are you hearing, Tom? Are we still ahead of pace in Brazil and Argentina for their harvest?
Well, yeah, because particularly in Brazil, their crop got planted pretty early, so as a result, some of that's going to be harvested early. All reports I've had that by mid-January they're going to be starting to harvest new crop beans. One of the things that's popped up, and we saw a nice little rally on Friday in beans because there is some wet conditions in Argentina, and that had the market a little nervous. Now we really had light volume and not many people participating, so it didn't take a whole lot of effort to get a 15-cent rally in beans. And that may very well soften back up next week when people start coming back to trade. But there is some sensitivity to South American weather for sure.
Absolutely. And the other big question I think on a lot of producers' brains that has been for a while now is acreage. Tom, we've got to talk about acreage estimates for 2019. It seems silly, but would we see any acres convert to rice maybe in the south areas?
Maybe. I don't know. To be honest with you, I have no idea on the dynamics of rice profitability and even cotton prices have been depressed, as you indicated earlier, and that certainly would be down in that area where they grow rice too. So yeah, I don't know. The acreage thing is going to be interesting. Not the time before, a couple times ago when I was on the show, I was concerned that you're going to see big acreage shifting from beans to corn. I guess I've moderated that a little bit simply because the more you talk to people, the more you find that production costs on corn are going to be up pretty substantially next spring, which makes it a little tougher to make that transition. If you take new crop corn versus new crop bean prices, that spread isn't that far off historical relationships. The one area that would tend to make you think so is up in the North Dakota, South Dakota area where they grow, 12 to 14% of our beans. I mean, they've gotten to be significant bean growers, and they've really taken a hit because of this lack of soybean demand out of China, because a lot of their beans went up into the Pacific Northwest, and there's nothing moving up that way. And so their basis is really bad. So if you take a cash beans versus cash corn price, it really favors corn in some of those areas. So I don't think there's any doubt there's going to be switching. I originally thought of 5 million, maybe more like 3 now.
Okay. Tom, let's talk about the meat markets. We mentioned earlier in the program, we've seen blizzard conditions all across the U.S. How is that impacting the live cattle market at this point?
It's impacted a lot. The cattle market's been overbought for quite a couple weeks now, really, and it continues to march higher strictly because of weather. And this is the time of the year when you got to be really cautious selling cattle, because almost invariably in this late December through end of February period, you can have these storms that give you these kind of pops. Now, generally speaking, they're not sustainable. They tend to have a nice jump up and then tend to fall apart. And as overbought as we are in the cattle, I suspect that's what's going to happen. Everybody was expecting the cash market to be a little firmer than it was this week, so there might be some disappointment next week if there isn't any follow through on that. I guess if the weather moderates at all, I'd probably use whatever rally we got at the end of the week or maybe into Monday to make some sales. December contract on cattle goes off the board on Monday. There's a lot of open positions in there, and with the rally you've had versus the cash market, I wouldn't be surprised to see some deliveries on the December contract, and that could sort of throw a little cold water on that market too.
What about when we look at feeders? We've closed above the 9-day moving average. Does that signal that the short-term trend remains positive?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, you've had a drop in corn prices, which is always a positive. Wheat prices have pulled back really this last week some. The fat prices, we broke up into new high ground on the February and I think on the April contract, so that always is encouraging for the feeder market. So all the stars have aligned a little bit to some extent for feeders. Now I wouldn't get too carried away with that, and at some point, breaking out into new highs is very rarely a bad thing. So you don't want to get in a big hurry, but I'd start watching that if it starts getting a little toppy and overbought. you might want to step in on that, making sales there.
Absolutely. Tom, 5 seconds. Are the hog markets continuing to head lower, or are they going to hold here?
I think they're going to hold here. We've got good Chinese demand. Market's oversold. I guess I'm looking for a little pop on the hog market.
A little pop in the hog market.
Yep.
We're going to save hogs and oil and cotton for Market Plus. Tom Fitzemeyer, thank you so much. That wraps up the broadcast portion of Market to Market, but we will keep this conversation going on Market Plus, where we'll answer more of your questions. You can find it on our website at markettomarket.org. If you make a resolution to write more in 2019, send us your thoughts via email to markettomarket@iptv.org. Join us again next week when we'll look back at the big stories of 2018 impacting rural America. So until then, thanks for watching. I'm Delaney Howell. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content. Pioneer Hybrid International is a proud sponsor of Market to Market. Tomorrow. For over 100 years, we've worked to help our customers be ready for tomorrow. Trust in tomorrow. Information is available from a Grinnell Mutual agent today. And by Sukup Manufacturing Company, offering a full line of grain drying and storage equipment and steel buildings. Sukup Manufacturing is on a mission to protect and preserve your crop and the tools that produce it.